When both you and the narcissist go silent, the world doesn't calm down. It detonates, because in that moment, someone finally loses control. And it's not you. Most people think mutual silence means the story is over, but the truth is far more unsettling. This is when the narcissist begins their real psychological spiral, and when your healing truly starts. Stay with me, because what happens next is the part no one prepares you for. If this is already hitting uncomfortably close to home, stay with this. You need to understand the psychological terrain you're stepping onto, because knowing this is how you break the pattern permanently. Let's go deeper. When both you and the narcissist stop contacting each other, the very first thing that happens on their side is what I call the recalibration phase. It's subtle, it's psychological, and it's something most people don't recognize because it happens in silence, behind the scenes, long before the narcissist ever makes a move. When you go quiet, you register it as an emotional shift, a boundary, a step toward healing. But the narcissist doesn't interpret your silence that way. They take it as data. Your lack of response becomes something they must decode, not something they respect. They begin to evaluate how they lost their grip, not how they hurt you. Narcissists do not self-reflect in the way healthy people do. Instead, they assess. Did you get distracted? Are you punishing them? Did someone else come into the picture? Are you testing them? They look for the angle, the motive, the potential threat. Your silence becomes a puzzle they need to solve because uncertainty destabilizes them. During this recalibration, they may not reach out at all. In fact, their quiet is not indifference, it's strategy. They might watch your online activity, check your social circles, or observe who's engaging with you. They're gathering information, waiting for your next emotional move. Narcissists believe that people they once controlled will always return, so your silence is not interpreted as closure. It is interpreted as temporary resistance. This is why they do not panic immediately. Instead, they hold back, assuming you will break the silence first, the same way you have before. They rely on the patterns they created in you, the guilt, the fear of conflict, the hope for harmony. They expect you to fold. When you don't, their recalibration becomes more intense. They begin to wonder whether their influence is slipping, and that is when the threat becomes real to them. Silence in their world is never neutral. It is either an opportunity to reestablish dominance or a danger to their ego. And the longer you stay quiet, the more they feel the ground shift beneath them because your silence disrupts the power dynamic they depended on. When both sides fall into silence, the emotional experience is dramatically different for you than it is for the narcissist. And this contrast reveals an uncomfortable truth. You feel the loss, but they feel the inconvenience. When you stop contacting, you're often carrying the full weight of what happened. You're sorting through the emotional wreckage, the broken trust, the unanswered questions, and the psychological exhaustion. You may feel sadness, withdrawal, confusion, or even guilt. You're grieving not just the relationship, but the version of yourself that tolerated so much. Your silence comes from emotional saturation. You've reached a point where your mind and body cannot handle more chaos. You're trying to reclaim space, dignity, and clarity. That internal struggle is heavy, and it affects your sleep, your self-esteem, your memories, and your sense of identity. Meanwhile, the narcissist doesn't interpret the silence through emotional depth. They don't sit with the loss the way you do. They don't reflect on what went wrong or how they hurt you or what needs to change. Instead, their first reaction is rooted in inconvenience. Your silence disrupts their routine, not their heart. They're used to having access to your attention, your reactions, your apologies, your caretaking, even your arguments. All of it fed their sense of importance. When you go silent, that stream of validation suddenly shuts off. This doesn't break them emotionally, it simply irritates them. They experience the absence of supply, the way someone experiences losing access to a service they've relied on. It's a disruption, a delay, a frustration. They aren't thinking, I lost someone meaningful. They're thinking, why aren't they responding? Your pain and their inconvenience exist in two separate psychological worlds. You're mourning the relationship while they're assessing their access. You're trying to rebuild yourself while they're calculating how your silence affects their ego. You feel the emptiness. They feel the interruption. And as time passes, this difference becomes even clearer. You slowly begin to recognize how heavy the emotional burden truly was, and how much of yourself you silence to keep the peace. They begin to wonder why something that used to work so easily, your emotional responsiveness, suddenly isn't working. The imbalance becomes visible. Your silence forces you deeper into introspection and healing, while it forces them into annoyance and entitlement. The emotional weight you carry is profound, while the discomfort they feel is tied not to losing you, but to losing the convenience of your compliance. When both sides go silent, the narcissist does not experience that quiet as a pause or a mutual step back. They experience it as a direct challenge to their ego, because silence from someone they once controlled feels like rebellion. The narcissist sees relationships through a lens of dominance, not reciprocity. So when you no longer respond, no longer reach out, and no longer supply them with attention, it disrupts the psychological hierarchy they believe they established. They interpret your silence as an act of defiance, even if your intention was simply to protect your peace or regain emotional clarity. In their mind, silence is never neutral. It's an affront, it's resistance, it's proof that their influence may be slipping. This is why silence affects them more deeply than any argument. Arguments give them relevance. Reactivity gives them power. Even anger reinforces their belief that they still matter in your emotional world. But silence removes them from the center of the stage, and that removal threatens the fragile narrative they rely on. Your silence forces them to confront the possibility that they are not as indispensable, desirable, or dominant as they thought. Narcissists cannot tolerate ambiguity, and your lack of communication creates exactly that, a space they cannot control or decode. Instead of seeing your silence as a healthy boundary, they see it as a provocation. This is when their internal dialogue becomes distorted. They may tell themselves you're being disrespectful, ungrateful, or manipulative. They may interpret your distance as a game, assuming you're trying to trigger a reaction from them. Their ego leads them to believe that your silence is a tactic, not a sign of exhaustion or self-protection. Some narcissists will mentally shift to a competitive stance, seeing the silence as a battle of wills they must win. Others will frame it as betrayal, convincing themselves you abandoned them, even though they may have mistreated you for months or years. They rewrite the meaning of your silence to protect their self-image, not to understand your experience. As this psychological tension builds, the narcissist's sense of control begins to waver. Your silence becomes a mirror, reflecting their own insecurity. And rather than sitting with that discomfort, they begin creating narratives that restore their superiority. They may assume you'll eventually give in because you always have, or they may start plotting ways to punish you emotionally for not behaving according to their script. In their world, silence threatens their ego because it suggests something they cannot accept. You may no longer be under their psychological influence. When both sides stop contacting each other, something very different happens internally for the narcissist than for you. For you, the silence may feel like space to breathe, space to process, space to finally understand what you survived. But for the narcissist, your absence creates a kind of psychological vacuum that forces them to confront something they spend their entire lives avoiding: the loss of control. They don't think in terms of mutual distance or mutual boundaries. Instead, they interpret your disengagement as a fracture in the system they built to sustain their identity. Narcissists do not operate from an internal sense of worth. Their self-esteem is externally constructed, held together by the reactions, attention, and validation of the people in their orbit. You were part of that system. Your emotions, your responses, your pattern of returning after conflict, all of that reinforce their sense of superiority and influence. When you go silent, you interrupt that cycle, and that interruption forces them into a moment of psychological exposure. It confronts them with their dependence on your engagement, something they don't want to acknowledge even to themselves. They built a narrative where they were the dominant one, the one in control, the one calling the shots. Your silence challenges that story. It signals that you may have stepped out of the role they assigned you, and this destabilizes their carefully managed identity. Without your reactions, they have nothing to push against, nothing to manipulate, nothing to use as evidence of their power. This absence becomes a threat, not because they care about the relationship in a meaningful or emotionally mature way, but because it disrupts the foundation of control that allowed them to feel significant. This is the moment when their internal state becomes restless. They may begin replaying past conversations, searching for signs they missed. They may wonder if someone else has taken their place. They may start scanning for ways to reassert dominance, even if they still haven't contacted you. The silence becomes louder for them than it does for you, because they don't know what's happening on your side. That lack of visibility robs them of the illusion that they can predict your behavior. They are suddenly outside of your world, not at the center of it. And that loss of centrality is psychologically intolerable for them. Their mind shifts from arrogance to anxiety, from entitlement to suspicion, from certainty to instability. And all of it is triggered by something as simple as your absence. When both you and the narcissist retreat into silence, it may seem from the outside like nothing is happening. But internally, the narcissist begins moving through a predictable series of compensatory behaviors designed to restore their sense of control. One of the most common reactions is their attempt to fill the void your absence created through hoovering, baiting, or triangulation. These tactics aren't random. They're psychological tools the narcissist uses when they feel their influence slipping. Hoovering happens when they realize your silence isn't temporary. At first, they assume you'll return because that's what they've conditioned you to do. When you don't, the panic starts. Hoovering is their attempt to pull you back into the cycle, not because they value you emotionally, but because losing you threatens their ego's stability. They may send a soft message, a nostalgic memory, or a crisis-centered plea. They may appear remorseful, reflective, or unusually attentive. They adjust their tone to whatever they think will work because the goal isn't reconnection, it's reinstating control. If hoovering fails or feels too vulnerable for them, they shift to baiting. Baiting is designed to provoke an emotional reaction from you, whether positive or negative. Narcissists don't care which direction your emotions go. They care about being the cause. They might post something online aimed at triggering jealousy, send a sharp or dismissive message to get you angry, or create unnecessary drama that forces you to respond. Any reaction, even a negative one, restores their sense of relevance. Silence strips them of power, so baiting becomes their way of poking the wound they created, hoping you'll bleed just enough to remind them you're still accessible. When those strategies don't work, they escalate to triangulation. This is where they bring in someone else, an ex, a new partner, a friend, a family member, not for genuine connection, but to craft a narrative that puts them back in control. They might flaunt a new relationship, hint that someone else appreciates them more, or exaggerate your silence to appear like the victim. The entire point of triangulation is to make you feel displaced, insecure, or replaceable. It's meant to lure you back into defending your worth or reestablishing your position in their life. These behaviors aren't proofs of love, they're proofs of dependence. The narcissist relies on external supply to maintain a sense of identity. And when you withdraw that supply, they scramble for ways to patch the hole. Hoovering, baiting, and triangulation are their attempts to regain psychological dominance, not emotional closeness. They're reactions born from fear, entitlement, and ego disruption, all triggered by your silence. When the silence stretches on both sides, something profound begins to unfold that most people don't expect. While you may interpret the quiet as a step toward peace or closure, the narcissist experiences it as a growing sense of unease. Your silence is not interpreted as calm, it's interpreted as a loss of control. And because their identity is so heavily dependent on the reactions of others, especially people they once pulled into their orbit, the absence of your response triggers a kind of internal alarm. What becomes important here is understanding that your quiet is not their peace, it's their panic. Narcissists rely on emotional stimulation from others to maintain the fragile structure of their self-esteem. They need attention, admiration, conflict, drama, anything that places them at the center of someone else's emotional world. When you stop supplying that energy, they feel an internal collapse beginning. They don't know how to regulate themselves without external feedback, and your silence deprives them of that feedback. This creates a psychological chain reaction. At first, they may try to dismiss your silence, pretending it doesn't matter. They may act unbothered, detached, or even relieved, but this is a defensive facade. As time passes, the quiet becomes harder for them to ignore. Without your attention anchoring their inflated self-image, they start to feel insignificant, overlooked, and irrelevant. These feelings are intolerable for them because they strike at the core of their biggest fear, being ordinary, invisible, or unimportant. While you may be using the silence to gather strength or rebuild your sense of self, they experience the same silence as an emotional void that threatens their entire identity. Your nervous system begins to calm without the constant tension or unpredictability they brought into your life. The fog lifts. You start to recognize your worth and reclaim parts of yourself that were suppressed. You find clarity in the quiet while they find chaos. This Contrast becomes even more stark the longer the silence continues. They might begin ruminating, replaying interactions, imagining scenarios, or inventing reasons why you're no longer engaging. The uncertainty gnaws at them. They don't miss the relationship. They miss the reflection of themselves they used to see in your reactions. And so, while your silence is healing, theirs is destabilizing. You find pieces of yourself returning. They feel pieces of their constructed identity slipping. What feels peaceful and necessary for you becomes agitating and threatening for them. This difference in experience is what ultimately exposes the imbalance that existed all along, showing you that the quiet sets you free while it slowly unravels them internally. When the silence settles on both sides, something begins to shift inside you in a way that often feels slow, confusing, and strangely relieving all at once. Your nervous system, which has been living in a state of constant alert throughout the relationship, finally gets a chance to stop bracing for the next emotional blow. Narcissistic relationships create a chronic state of hypervigilance. You learn to anticipate their moods, their reactions, their unpredictable emotional climate. Your body becomes conditioned to expect tension even in moments of calm. So when the silence begins, your system doesn't instantly relax. At first, it doesn't know how. You may feel agitated, restless, or uncomfortable with the quiet. You may interpret the lack of conflict as something being wrong. That response is not weakness, it's biology. Your body has been trained to operate in survival mode, but as time passes, the fog starts to lift. Your mind slowly untangles itself from the chaos. You begin noticing how your thoughts change when you're not constantly anticipating their next outburst or manipulation. Your sleep improves. You start feeling moments of stillness that you haven't felt in years. This is your nervous system recalibrating. It's recognizing that the danger has subsided. This is the beginning of real healing, the kind that doesn't require permission, apology, or closure from them. This is the moment when you start reclaiming emotional bandwidth that was once entirely consumed by their needs, demands, and crises. You rediscover your capacity to think clearly, to feel your own emotions without someone else manipulating or invalidating them, and to make decisions based on your own values instead of walking on eggshells.